Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today's topic is about the seven heavens according to the Quran. We all know that there are a good handful of verses in the Quran that talk about the seven heavens. And I always wondered, what does God mean when he talks about the seven heavens? Some have said that the word seven or sab'a in Arabic means many, so they think that God is saying many heavens here. However, this has no true Quranic foundation, simply because the word seven in the Quran means just that, seven, the number seven. Others have tried to give it more of a scientific twist and say this refers to seven universes and that we are engulfed within seven universes. But we all know, scientifically speaking, that there are more universes than that. Others have said that we live under seven atmospheres. And of course, this doesn't make any sense either because the stratification of atmospheres is purely man-made. So to me, none of these claims make any sense. And from this, I'd like to contend that the Quran is not a book of science. So to me, those who make the scientific claims in the Quran, I don't find any basis to this whatsoever. Of course, we'll cover this in another topic, the idea of science in the Quran. But just for the sake of keeping this video short, to me, there is no such thing as the Quran containing scientific information. With that being said, allow me to share with you something that I think that is very important for this video and for all other claims of science in the Quran. The Quran speaks of the natural world primarily from an earthly perspective. Again, the Quran, when it talks about the natural world, it talks about the natural world from an earthly perspective, from things that the human can observe. And this is why throughout the Quran, when God talks about the sun, the moon, the clouds, the mountains, the rivers, the stars, the separation of waters, embryology, even cosmology, all of these are oriented from an earthly perspective, simply so that the human can appreciate the design of God. None of these claims are scientific. These are all simple observations and or things that the human can relate to from an earthly perspective. With that being said, and again, this point is very important to understand, let's approach the idea of the seven heavens. So let's begin with the phrase sab'a samawat, seven heavens. The Arabic word sab'a simply means seven, whereas samawat comes from the root samawa, which means something above. Anything that is above something is a form of samawa. This is important to understand. And God in Surah 71 verse 15 says, "Did you not see how God created seven heavens in layers? Alam taraw kayfa khalaqa Allahu sab'a samawatin tibaqa." Here, this brings me back to my previous point in which I emphasized that the Quran talks about the creation from an earthly standpoint, limited to the human perception. And this is why this verse says, "Did you not see how God created seven heavens in layers?" This indicates that the seven heavens are certainly observational from an earthly standpoint. It means that the seven heavens we can observe here on earth with the naked eye because it's relating to the people 1400 years ago. With that being said, let's go to the next slide and find out exactly what God is talking about here. So as we have seen so far, 71:15 is a huge indicator for us that the human can observe the seven heavens. With that, I bring you to Surah 6, verse 75, where it says, "And it is such that we showed Abraham the kingdoms of the heavens and the earth." Malakut as-samawat wal-ard. The kingdoms of the heavens and the earth. So God here is telling us that he is going to show Abraham the kingdoms of the heavens and the earth. So this is a huge hint for us as to what's going to happen. In the next verse, God showed Abraham a planet, a kawkab in Arabic. It's not a star, but a kawkab. Not najm, but kawkab, planet. Then in the next verse, God says that he showed Abraham the moon. Okay, so that's part of the kingdom as well. Then in the next verse, God showed Abraham the sun, which is also part of this kingdom. So this is a huge indicator for us that God is showing Abraham the kingdom of the heavens, which indicates these are inclusive to the idea of the seven heavens. Now, as far as observation is concerned, we really don't need to cover the moon or the sun because these are obvious objects that we all know. However, let me talk to you briefly about the planets. Planets are quite unique in the sky. First of all, planets are non-twinkling stars, and this is why God used the Arabic word kawkab, planet, not najm or a star. Although it might appear as a star in the sky, but ultimately if you pay attention, planets are non-twinkling stars in the sky. Additionally, planets have a unique orbit in comparison to the background of stars. Lastly, and most importantly, there are only 5 visible planets with the naked eye. Again, we are talking about 1400 years ago, people that observed the sky 1400 years ago. There are more planets that we know of now in our solar system. However, the Quran is speaking from an earthly perspective, from a human observational standpoint, obviously with the naked eye. The 5 visible planets in the sky are Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, Venus, and Mercury. And anybody with the naked eye can observe these. So with that being said, Prophet Abraham saw a planet. He saw a kawkab. He saw one of these. I'm guessing most likely Venus, because that tends to happen right after sunset. And so God was showing the prophet these kingdoms of the heavens and the earth. With that being said, we know that there are 5 visible planets in the sky, 1 moon, 1 sun. This brings us to 7 visible objects with the naked eye. And this is what I would contend as the Quran be talking about the 7 heavens. Again, God says, did you not see how God created 7 heavens in layers? The 7 heavens are referring to the skies of the 5 planets, the 1 moon, and the 1 sun. Again, from an earthly standpoint, these are 7 visible objects with the naked eye. Now, of course, a lot of you may be wondering, well, what about the things that are beyond the 7 celestial bodies that I talked about? And this is actually a legitimate question, obviously. God says in Surah 37 verse 6, we have adorned the worldly heaven with a decoration of planets. So the worldly heaven contains the planets. And God also says that this same worldly heaven contains lamps, masabih. The worldly heaven in the Quran is referring to our visible sky. And so according to these verses, our visible sky contains the planets plus the background of stars, the lamps. This simply teaches us that the 7th heaven, the highest heaven relatively speaking, is expansive. It's beyond our perception. It contains those lamps, okay? Moreover, the Arabic word samawat, okay? Samawat in of itself indicates that there are things that are beyond the 7th heaven. But God also says in Surah 51 verse 47, and the heaven we have constructed with resources and we are expanding it. Lamusi'un. This is a continuous process. It means that there are things beyond the 7th heaven, beyond our visible sky. And this is what the Quran is talking about. So God did create the 7 heavens in relation to what we perceive here on earth, but he also tells us that there are things beyond the 7th heaven because he says it is continuously expanding. Now, with all this being said, let's talk about the idea of 7 earths. Did God really say that there are 7 earths? In Surah 65 verse 12, it says, God is the one who created 7 heavens, and from the earth like them. Now, I'm sure you can all contend with me that if God would have said he created 7 heavens and 7 earths, then it would have been very clear that there exists 7 earths. But he says, and from the earth like them. وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ مِثْلَهُنَّ. And from the earth like them, the heavens. What does this really mean? Why didn't God just say 7 earths? Well, we can cross-reference this grammatical connotation, I should say, with Surah 36, where God talks about Noah. God says, we carried their ancestors on the charged ship, and we created for them from like it what they ride. Min mithlihi ma yarkabun. From like it, the ship, what they ride. So God didn't say that he is creating more ships. He says, from like it, the ship, what they ride, referring to any other things or objects that you can ride, such as livestock, right? You're a horse or whatever. So likewise, the grammatical connotation is applied into this verse. God says, وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ مِثْلَهُنَّ. So God isn't saying 7 more earths. God is saying, وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ, and from the earth. So God is referring to an operational standpoint of the earth. In other words, the 7 celestial bodies operating, behaving in the same manner as the earth. And this refers to, again, the 7 heavens that we talked about. The moon, the sun, plus the 5 planetary bodies who are operating and behaving in the same manner as the earth from an operational standpoint, from an orbital standpoint, right? So this is exactly what God is talking about. To further reinforce this point of mine, the same verse says, the command is sent down between them. And when God talks about the creation of the 7 heavens, he inspired to every heaven its command. Al-Amr is what God is talking about. So God isn't saying that there are 7 earths. He is saying, وَمِنَ الْأَرْضِ, and from the earth like them. At the operational standpoint of the 7 heavens that we already talked about. So to conclude, the Quran speaks of the natural world from an earthly perspective. God says, did you not see how God created 7 heavens in layers? And he talks about the planets, the moon, and the sun as part of the kingdom of heavens. There are 5 observational planets, 1 moon and 1 sun, which refers to the 7 heavens that God is talking about in the Quran and beyond. Assalamu alaikum, and inshallah see you in the next video.